All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on today's show. We really appreciate it. Today, we got kind of a different show for you. We've got Lucas Rockwood, who is the owner of Yoga Body Naturals, stopping in to talk about yoga, flexibility, and exercise, and all that kind of good stuff. So this should be fun. Today's date is Wednesday, September 19th, 2012, and this is episode number 10. So you can find it at extremehealthradio.com/10. And just to let you know, all of our shows are transcribed. Give us a couple weeks. And anything the guest says or I say during a show is searchable on our website. So that's a really, really powerful feature. So take advantage of that. And then there's also show notes too. So if the guest mentions a book or a website, anything like that, all of that will be on the show notes at extremehealthradio.com/10. If you have any questions for me or for the guest, you can email them to me at justin@extremehealthradio.com, or you could call and leave a message on our voicemail line that we can play on the air, which is 949-391-7363. And just wanted to let you know this show is brought to you by the Vitamix blender. This is the blender that my wife and I use every day, probably about 3 times a day actually, and it's just a great machine. And if you're ever going to buy one, please buy it through us and we'll get a little commission, so that will help keep us going. You can find that at extremehealthradio.com/Vitamix. And before we introduce our guest, I just want to talk a little bit about some of our upcoming guests and our show schedule. We've got lots of great guests. Typically, we're doing shows right now on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for you. And we've got lots of great guests coming up. On Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, we typically do shows on health. But in the future, I'd like to do Tuesdays and Thursdays for things like politics and finances and things like that. So stay tuned for that. But in October, we've got Dr. Charles Partito, who is the creator of the Ejuva Cleanse. And we've got Nina Silver, who's doing lots of great work with energy medicine and frequency technology, and using Rife machines to heal from diseases. We've got Ramil Nagel, who is the master of making sure you don't have any cavities or any tooth decay and things like that, reversing tooth decay. And we've got Dr. Mark Circus next month, who's a physician out of Brazil. He's doing some amazing things with his work with sodium bicarbonate and cancer and that kind of stuff. So we've also got Amanda Love next month, who will be teaching us about fermented foods and how to make anything you need fermented, and the benefits of fermented food and bacteria and all that kind of good stuff. So stay tuned to our show page and make sure to check that for upcoming guests. And so let me introduce our guest. I'm really excited today to have Lucas Rockwood. He's a yoga teacher and teacher trainer, and he's originally from the United States, but he now lives in Spain and Thailand, and he conducts professional yoga teacher training courses and yoga retreats. He's also a nutritional coach who studied under Gabriel Cousens in Arizona. Gabriel Cousens runs the Tree of Life Healing Center out in Patagonia, I think, Arizona. And he's a yoga teacher and has studied with some of the world's greatest teachers, including Sri K. Bobby Joyce, I just butchered that name, Sharath Ranjaswamy, Alex Medin, Paul Daligan, and Eddie Stern. And he's known for his passion for nutrition, health, and transformation. So thanks a lot, Lucas, again, for joining us. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, hey, Justin, glad to be here.
Great. So you've been, so you studied with Gabriel Cousens.
Yeah, I got into raw food and raw plant-based nutrition about a little over a decade ago, and yeah, just kind of as a lot of people do, you kind of stumble upon something that works for you, and take it as far as you can, and for me, it really led to a whole life transformation. A big part of that was when I spent some time at a kind of crazy place called the Tree of Life in Arizona, where there's a medical doctor there, and one of his main medicines that he uses is plant-based food. And so it was really pretty amazing experience.
Wow. So now you are I believe you're in Barcelona or somewhere in Spain, right?
Yeah, so I spend most of the year now in Spain, and I also still spend a lot of time in Thailand, where we do a lot of yoga events, primarily yoga teacher training courses. But yeah, I'm really lucky to split my time between two beautiful places. So,
wow. So when you were in the United States, where did you live when you were here?
You know, I've left the U.S. about 10 years ago, and I lived all over the place. But I was a teenager in California, and then I spent just about as long in New York. But I've lived in many places. But New York and California are kind of the closest things that I have to home. But at this point, I'm kind of a citizen of the world, kind of a wandering traveler.
Nice. So did you get interested in moving abroad after you got involved with the raw food diet?
I did. You know, I guess for me, what happened is I just, you know, when I was in my early 20s, I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And like a lot of people, you know, I got a corporate job and learned a lot of great things. And it was really a good opportunity, all things considered. But I just couldn't really see where things were going. And I discovered, you know, the raw food movement at the time was a really new thing. Now it's very mainstream, and you can find stuff all over the place. But back then, it was very cutting edge, and it felt like there was just a handful of us, and we were kind of you know, this crazy band of renegade bandits eating, you know, coconuts and running around doing yoga and stuff. And one of the places kind of on the map for that community was Thailand. And among other things, because there's really great produce and good weather and good sunshine. And so yeah, I was running a big restaurant in New York, and I just decided I'd take a 6-month sabbatical and go to Thailand. Just something I'd never done before, and I got there, and I just never really left. And I was there for about 7 years, and one thing led to another. Ended up opening a restaurant and a yoga studio, and starting the company that we were talking about, Yoga Body Naturals, and doing teacher trainings, and married a Spanish woman, and ended up living in Barcelona and splitting my life between here and Thailand. So,
oh wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I know a lot of raw food people, and other types of people that are interested in health are living now in Ecuador and, you know, Central America. And I think maybe it's because of some of the health freedoms. Have you noticed in Spain, are there better health freedoms out there?
No, Spain is kind of a nightmare when it comes to health. I mean, they have social health care, which sounds really great, but of course the system's not so great. Whenever anything's public, it's never the greatest thing. But at least it's available. But in terms of availability of natural foods, availability of, you know, nutritional supplements, and even basic vitamins is really crude. Like, for example, you can't buy vitamin D is not available in Spain in a pharmacy. Just bizarre.
Wow.
It's like probably one of the top 5 vitamins people take, and you can't find it in a pharmacy.
Wow.
So, but in Asia, Asia's become especially Thailand, has become a huge health destination. So even 25% of the travelers going to Thailand now go there for health reasons. So maybe they want to get heart surgery, maybe they want to get cosmetic dental work, maybe they want to get treatment for cancer, all kinds of things. Southeast Asia has really become a hub for that, just because it's a lot more affordable. In many cases, the hospitals are more comfortable, and it's also a nice place to end up. So,
wow, interesting. Yeah. So, for those who don't know, Lucas's website is yogabodynaturals.com, and that will be linked up to this on this show page. I just want to let you know that. And so, Lucas, so you have been doing yoga now pretty much since you started the raw food diet. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, so I started working in New York during the .com era, and life was really easy to get work and things. And so I had a corporate job, and I worked on Lower Broadway, and nothing amazing. I mean, I was a young kid, but I had a good job, and I was happy as these things go. But I was kind of lost as well. I didn't know what I was going to do. I kind of stumbled into a career that I hadn't really chosen, and, you know, one thing led to another, and I just, I'd put on a bunch of weight and got into drugs and alcohol and, just all these sort of vices that people pick up. And one day I stumbled into a yoga class, and it really just kicked my ass. And that was, over 10 years ago. And from that day, I've probably practiced yoga at least 300 days out of the year. A lot of years it was, 360 days out of the year. And I never really stopped. Like, I just got hooked. And, when I first got into it, my whole life changed so fast that, I lost 41 pounds in a span of about 6 weeks, and so my clothes were hanging off me, and I literally had to change my entire wardrobe. None of my clothes fit me anymore. I ran into my boss on the street, and she didn't recognize me. She literally walked right by me. All this happened so quickly. So for me, it was just really exciting to see how quickly you can transform your life. I always say that there's kind of 3 big areas in life that we're working on. It's usually health, wealth, or relationships. Mm-hmm. And of those 3, the reason I like to work in the health field and I get so excited about health is because it's accessible to everybody, and the results are really, really fast. It's literally in 6 weeks I had a different life, and I don't know of ways to do that with your wealth or with your relationships. I think each of those take more time. And so I just find that, of the 3 big areas where I was focusing on in life, it's really an exciting area where you can go and see and help people make changes now as a teacher and help people become instructors. And so it's a really rewarding path for me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we had Philip McCluskey on last week, and he as you probably know, he lost, I think, over 200 pounds on a raw food diet. And, it's like you said, stuff like this can happen overnight. And so are you still doing 100% raw, or what's your diet? Because there's a big connection, as you say on your website, between diet and flexibility. So do you still do mainly raw, or what's kind of your nutritional program?
Yeah, what happens with food, I always say, is that food becomes religion, and the truth is almost everything becomes religion if you're not careful. Mm-hmm. And there's wonderful things about religion, which is that there's a structure and you have a protocol and you have a community, but there's also really negative things about religion, and that is that you stop thinking and you kind of become a mindless zombie. And especially these days when kind of the traditional religious structures have really broken down in a lot of Western countries, I find that people are picking up with these really weird things and turning them into religion, whether it's raw food or, CrossFit or paleo lifestyle or whatever it is. Everybody's got their thing, and it's awesome to see people so connected, but it quickly turns into dogma. And so for me, the raw thing was a total cult, and I was fully in it, and I was teaching in it, and I was proselytizing and recruiting people for a couple of years. I ended up setting up a couple of restaurants and doing all kinds of stuff, and it was really positive work, all of it was. But there just came a moment where I realized that it went way beyond what I was really looking for. And my goal was just to feel great, help people change their lives, and I realized it was turning into this cult. And people were looking to me for all kinds of things that were totally not appropriate things to be looking to a 25-year-old kid for. So I kind of backed out of the whole craziness of the scene, and I've always just kind of stayed. I've always been a plant-based guy for 10 years. I don't eat meat, and I don't eat any dairy or anything like that. But I try to avoid the labels, and I don't like the raw food label, and I don't like the vegetarian label. It just ends up becoming this thing that becomes more negative than positive, and people talking more about what they don't eat instead of what they do eat. And so these days I eat plants. I eat all kinds of plants. In my house, I think we eat about 40 or 50 kilos of produce a week. It's kind of ridiculous. We have these local farmers who come in and bring us these boxes. Wow. And we juice and we do all kinds of things. And my diet is always changing, but there's always tons and tons of raw food. I don't really measure, and I don't really keep track of percentages, but it just depends on where I am too and the time of the year. Like when I'm in Thailand, I might eat 80, 90, 100% raw for weeks at a time without noticing it. And then here in the winter in Spain, I might be eating 20% raw for a month or two. But right. I just find that it's really kind of this thing where people think the percentage has something to do with it, and it really doesn't. For some people, if they just eat 10% raw, they're going to feel fantastic. For other people, maybe they need to eat, like me, I need to eat really a lot of raw food or I feel pretty lousy. But there's no real rule, and everybody's body's different and different times of the year and different stages of life as well. So
right, yeah, I've noticed the same thing. When I first started, I started eating 100% raw from 2003 to 2010, I think, and then I kind of branched off and doing some other things now. But you're right, it really turns into a really dogmatic thing. So I wanted to ask you, or just mention, it's great, isn't it, these days and these times where you can do something like what you're doing, where you've created an amazing website and you've got all kinds of resources and products on there, physical products and digital products. And it's just so cool because if people like you and me were alive, 50 years ago, the resources would be so few for us to be able to do these types of things. And talk a little bit about your business and how fulfilling it's been to start your own business and to maybe encourage people to kind of get out of the corporate life like you did and do some of the same things.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that people are always most interested in when they talk to me is my work lifestyle, because it's so unconventional. I've worked in multiple countries and I've done all these things, and people automatically assume that I came from some kind of privileged background, or that I have some kind of great education, or that I'm super bright. And the truth is, none of those things are true. I failed kindergarten, dropped out of college. I was bankrupt. I mean, everything you could imagine. I mean, I think the best thing I had going for me is common sense, but more than anything, just like a real passion for finding my way in life. But the greatest thing, like you said, the greatest thing that I find right now, and it's really the advent of the internet and the freedom of information, and now what we're looking at is kind of the freedom of borders, where it doesn't matter so much where you live, it's kind of what you're doing. And I find that it's just such a blessing for a guy like me, because I'm really a yoga bum. That's what I am. I'm a raw foodist yoga bum. And if it wasn't for the day and age in which I was lucky enough to be born in, I'd be totally broke and I wouldn't be able to support my family. There's no question about it. Even just 10 years earlier, I don't think I would have been able to do what I'm able to do now. And what I'm able to do now is not like, buy big white houses on the hills and drive Mercedes-Benz or anything like that. But what I'm able to do is create a really large company and create a real positive work experience for tons of people in multiple countries. I'm able to employ, I'm able to, create yoga instructors, able to move money in a real positive direction that makes me feel really happy. I get to send my kids to good schools and, eat great food and all these kinds of, what I call kind of natural luxuries that are available, again, to people who are willing to kind of do the hard work. But the key thing that I always tell people is, you don't make money, you earn money. And it's you really do. Everyone I know who's a top performer, they really, really work for it. And I'm no exception. I work all the time and I love my work, but it's nonstop. And it's really just like when I first started yoga teaching, it's just service. And the more you get in a service mindset, the more you realize that you're here. If you want, the earth to do your bidding, you really have to serve her. And that's what you have to do all the time. Every day when you get up, you just got to think, how can I make my tribe happy? And whether your tribe is, a group of CrossFit people, whether your tribe is a group of investment bankers, whether your tribe is a yoga group or whatever it is, how can I serve them? How can I help them? And usually we're talking about helping them in those three main areas we mentioned before. But once you get in that service mentality and you start to put yourself last, which is really kind of counterintuitive for most entrepreneurs, they tend to put themselves first. But as soon as you put yourself last, it's amazing how things start to flow. And I wouldn't say it's easy, but things do flow, and they flow really naturally. So, yeah,
that's been kind of the story with what I've been able to do here with Extreme Health Radio. Currently, I still have employment on the side, but I'm kind of migrating more and more into this show. And it's been such a blessing to be able to wake up and to think about what guests we're going to have on and how to serve people. And, it really blows me away that, any other time but now we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And it's such an awesome thing with technology and, building a community and a following. And it's just been so much fun. And I'm sure you've had so much fun since you escaped the corporate lifestyle, right?
For sure. And I'm always a big advocate too of people just finding what works for them, because I find that a lot of people have these corporate gigs that are fantastic and there's no reason they need to leave, Right. A lot of people now I find have corporate jobs, and like I met a woman the other day who lives in rural Vermont and she has a total corporate executive job, but she managed to swing that, and she managed to work virtually and, goes in once a week or whatever, once a month for 5 days or whatever it is. And so it's not so much like you got to be an entrepreneur, because it's a different kind of wiring than most people have, but really just kind of taking control of your life, and your life is service, and then the possibilities are really limitless. And a lot of people don't need to do what I did and run away to Asia. A lot of them can do it right where they are right now, and oftentimes a lot easier than you think.
Right. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about your website and Yoga Body Naturals and all of that good stuff. So after this break, we'll be right back with Lucas Rockwood. All right, we're back with Lucas Rockwood from YogaBodyNaturals.com. And before the break, we're talking about some of his things that he's got going on with his business and his website. And so, Lucas, for some people out there who are listening, a lot of people are interested in yoga, but not a lot of people are, jumping into the bandwagon full bore. So what are some of the benefits of yoga and becoming more flexible? And what are some of the benefits of adopting this practice?
I guess for me, the really exciting thing about a yoga practice is that it's I think of it like an asset, right? It's like you buy a home, you own the home. If you learn how to do yoga, it's an asset, and you could take it with you. The same way you can go skiing if you learn how to ski. The same way you can ride a bike. And the real benefit of it is, it's fitness, it's damage control, it's stress relief, and you don't need anything. And so there's so many fantastic fitness programs out there that are just ridiculous. I mean, of course, if you drag tires around your local city for 90 minutes every day for the next month, you're going to lose some weight. I mean, it's kind of a given. And I love that stuff, and I love exercising and fitness and all kinds of different stuff. But the reality is that most of us at some period of our life, whether it's when you have the kids or when you're traveling for work or whatever it is, you're going to get in some period of your life where you're not going anywhere. You're not going to the gym. You're not going to the fitness class. You got no personal trainer, nothing. And so what do you do then? And a yoga practice is a really, really, really comprehensive, holistic way to give yourself a mind-body workout, basically. And you can do it at home. And it's just so self-empowering in a way that most fitness programs are not. Most fitness programs, you're either doing it or you're not doing it. You're on or you're off. You got the, you did the 7 o'clock spinning class or you missed it. With yoga, once you really spend, about a year just learning the fundamentals and understanding how the practice works, it really is something that you can take with you. And for me, that's why I get really excited. I get really excited when people have the tools that they need to relieve stress after a busy day at work, or they have the tools that they need to relieve their back pain by doing some simple stretches before bed, or they have the tools that they need to do a practice that's so strong and athletic that it gives them the same buzz that they used to get from running, but maybe they can't run anymore because they've got shin splints or they've got tendonitis or they've got knee problems or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So that's for me what it really is exciting about. It's this lifelong practice that it's really, really sustainable. It's something that you can do for your entire life, and it's portable. You can take it with you, and it doesn't necessarily need to be complicated at all.
Right, and you don't need, if you're going to go traveling, you don't need weights. You just need a yoga mat. You don't really need to bring much equipment. Someone was saying recently that yoga enhances everything else, but everything else can't enhance yoga. Is that kind of a thing where, because if you are a football player and you're looking to pack on a bunch of pounds, training in the gym is not going to help your yoga, but yoga helps just about everything else that you do, right?
Sure. I mean, the way to look at it is basically you have yin activities and yang activities. So like, bench pressing, lifting weights, all these kinds of things, that would be considered like a yang activity, like an active rajasic, like a very strong activity, whereas a yin practice, which would be yin energies are slower and calming and cooling, those are going to be kind of the, it's the X and the Y. So they're balancing each other out, the positive and the negative. And so in some ways it's true, almost all athletics tend to be yang in nature, meaning they're muscle building and not muscle lengthening, meaning they're muscle shortening and not muscle lengthening. And so in that sense, it's true that, a yoga practice complements almost any physical practice really, really well. Rock climbers get fanatical about yoga. Golfers get crazy about yoga just because it can really balance out, which tends to lead to muscle imbalances. So anytime you're doing anything that's really strength building, whether it's lifting weights or you're doing asymmetrical swing with a golf club, all of these things lead to muscle imbalances, which eventually almost always lead to injury. And that's not to say you can't get hurt doing yoga. You can, and people do. But at least it's working towards balance, whereas almost every other activity you're doing is by nature putting you imbalanced. So when you see the hill climbers with these calves that are the size of my thighs, that's a muscular imbalance. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but it's important to recognize that most of what's happening when these guys have these massive biceps or these huge pecs is muscle imbalances, and that's going to play out somewhere else in the body. That pull is going to affect some other energy system in the body, and yoga tries to at least bring you back to balance. Now, we never end up getting balanced, and a lot of people end up getting so into yoga that they use yoga in a way that takes them too out of balance. The kind of stereotypical yoga guy walking down the street barefoot with dreadlocks kind of whistling at the stars. Right. That's the other end of the spectrum, right? That's the on one end we got a frat boy who's all juiced up and bumping chests, and then on the other end of the spectrum we got the guy with dreadlocks who's smoking pot and walking down the street. And so really what we're trying to do is move towards balance, and the reality is we never get balanced, and I just feel like life is just a game of bouncing the needle to one side and the other in your attempt to spend more time in the middle. But at the end of the day, that's what we're kind of looking for. Right.
So talk a little bit about the yin side of yoga and how it balances out the yang of working out, because I've heard that, I'm sure you've heard of the 5 rites and things like Qigong, where these things, according to Chinese medicine, will, help develop your inner qi, which is your, I guess, life force, the amount of life force that you have. And so is yoga one of those things as well?
Sure. There's all kinds of different language that goes around with, mind-body practices, specifically from Eastern countries. So people will talk about qi, and they'll talk about life force, and they'll talk about prana a lot in yoga. And I think that there's kind of a mistake to separate the two. And I think it's also what happens is a lot of people doing Eastern practices, whether it's martial arts or Qigong or Tai Chi or yoga, they tend to kind of poo-poo the Western practices like bodybuilding, like endurance training. And really, I think that's a mistake, because it really is just two sides of the same coin, and they're equally valuable. And just because there's sort of fancy words like, Qi and prana that might sound new to us in the West, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's more spiritual or anything like that. But the thing that yoga does is it is calming and cooling to your nervous system in most cases. So with most practices that you're doing, and that would be the same if you're doing a Qigong or a Tai Chi practice, is it's soothing to your nervous system. And so almost everything else we do in our life, especially our modern life, is very, very agitating. So whether it's the television shows we watch, whether it's the traffic, whether it's the constant SMS, whether it's the onslaught of emails, all that stuff is just putting us in this like adrenal fry state 24/7. And so, especially right now, like you see this explosion of yoga, a lot of it's just a response to where we're at right now culturally. And who knows, maybe 50 years from now, people will be really looped out, and maybe, they'll just see some guy throwing tires down the road, and that's going to be what they need. Maybe they're going to need that juice, or they're going to need the other side of the coin. But for whatever reason, right now, people are really, for the most part, people are all on adrenal burnout, and so any kind of mind-body practice, any kind of breathing, any kind of mindful meditation, any kind of yoga, any type of practice like that, people generally feel benefits very quickly.
Right. So if someone has never done yoga before, what kind of, I know there's a bunch of different styles, what kind of styles do you recommend, or what kind of styles do you kind of promote, or?
Sure. So, I mean, the challenge is just figuring out what you connect with. And there's a lot of different factors: how old you are, what your background is, what kind of people you like to hang around in. And the truth is, these days, there's a yoga class for everyone. And a lot of people are scared to go to yoga class because they think there's going to be a bunch of hippies. And there are those kinds of classes. Some people are scared to go to yoga class because they think it's going to be really hard. And there are those kind of classes. Right. Some people are scared because they think they're going to do meditation the whole time. And there are those kinds of classes. So the key thing I just tell people is just try them all. Just go in and try. Nobody will look at you funny. Nobody will care. at your average yoga studio, about 85% of people there are beginners at any given time, anywhere in the world. So just go and give it a try. If you come from an athletic background and you really like physical challenge, I usually recommend people give hot yoga a try, give power yoga or Ashtanga yoga a try. If you're looking at yoga more as a spiritual or meditative practice, you might look at something more gentle like an integral yoga or a classic hatha or Shivananda style practice. Mm-hmm. But in general, the best thing to do is just to take a bunch of classes. Maybe have a yoga day. Maybe it's Saturdays, and for a month, just try out all the studios in your local area and just find something that you connect with. And with fitness, people are always looking for some kind of excuse, and I just try to take away the excuse and say, hey, just get out there and do it, and you'll find something that you connect with. You'll at least take away a piece from each of the classes you take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing too is a lot of people I think might be put off by yoga, or some people may be, because of the most yoga classes are going to be very spiritual and focus in that direction, and in our culture it's mainly a Christian culture here, and so I think maybe some people may be put off to yoga, but really you can find classes that aren't that way, and you can sort of focus on other things right when you're in yoga class. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a thing that you are scared of because it may be Eastern and maybe you're Christian, right?
Yes, I mean it's an interesting point. So the whole yoga movement, I get applicants every day from Indian students wanting to come study with us in Thailand, Western style yoga. So it's just interesting the way the whole movement has looped around. Mm-hmm. But these days yoga classes are less and less religious or spiritual based. Mm-hmm. And more fitness based, and kind of leave the spirituality up to the individual, which is kind of my tendency. And the reason that I tend that way is because I live a very international life, and I never even know what the person sitting next to me is raised with. And if you're in the middle of Wisconsin, you probably have probably 90% of the people were raised Christian. There's a few Jews around, and there's a few other people from other countries. But if you're in downtown New York, who knows where those people are from and what their background is, and who knows if they're going to be comfortable with Sanskrit words or Hindu or Sanskrit chants and things like this. Mm-hmm. But I always just encourage people to just be totally comfortable with who you are, and just call the studio and just say, hey, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or I'm a Muslim, and I'm wondering, is your studio at all religious or affiliated with any religious organizations? I'm just looking for a place where I can learn meditation, or I'm just looking for a place where I can come and do my own thing. And the so many studios now are catering to that audience, and they're receptive to that. And I when I first started practicing, that was a big deal for me. I just wanted to go to a place where people let me create my own space. So even when I studied meditation, I always studied it outside of any kind of religious or spiritual tradition, just as a practice itself. Just because I just feel like spirituality is not for sale, and it's something that people have to decide on their own, and even the interpretation of what it means to be a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim is so different to each person. For me, I find the richness of experience really when you bring people together and let them sort of come to their own conclusions. Right.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for me, I've been doing yoga now for probably about a year, and I do the hot yoga. What's that called? I forget what it's called.
Well, there's a number of different styles, but Bikram is probably the most established brand, and there's other styles as well. Like we teach a style called Absolute Hot Yoga. Okay. And there's also a style called Moksha Yoga, which is pretty popular in Canada, and then a fourth one which is called Barkan, and then there's also just freestyle hot yoga, which could be any number of different things.
Okay, yeah, I've been doing the hot yoga, and I can't go. I mean, I only do it a couple days a week, but the sweating that's involved, and I can't get enough of it. And if a day goes by or a week goes by where I don't go and I can't stretch and get that lengthening, man, I feel it so quickly with just the next day not going to class. And it's such an amazing thing to be able to feel and to be able to be in tune with your body, where I can't go a day or two without doing some kind of stretching. And I think that's what's so great about your gravity yoga, is that you can implement that no matter what yoga practice you're currently involved with, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a big part of what we do with a lot of our at-home training, is just trying to give people really manageable, really powerful practices, but really manageable practices. So another thing that turns people off about yoga is this whole long class idea, right? A lot of classes are 90 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And I mean, for me, I love that. You know, I mean, for 10 years, every day I spend a couple hours doing yoga every day. But for your average person, that's too much. They got other things that they want or need to be doing. And at the end of the day, for me, it's really a total lifestyle. But for most people, it's not. And it's not a lifestyle. It's just part of their life. And their lifestyle is about other things. And they want to use yoga to supplement their life and to enhance their life. And so that's why I like to teach people really, really short, powerful things they can do at home. So, yeah, one of our more successful programs is a 15-minute per night at-home program that is specifically for deep stretching. So it's not for athleticism, it's not about breathing, specifically about flexibility. So people will use it to overcome back pain, to loosen up their hips, to loosen up locked up shoulders, this kind of thing.
Right. And I think on your website you have like a 7-day email program that people can get, right? If they just sign up right there on your website.
We do, yeah.
That's great. And so a while back, I took a class called Yin Yoga, and it was basically designed for longer stretches where you hold them for about 5 minutes or so. And I think you talk a lot about holding stretches for long periods of time versus the more fitness style yoga where you're kind of doing more of a flow. What are some of the benefits of holding a stretch for long periods of time?
Yeah, so it's interesting, as a yoga teacher, you see people come for different reasons. And a lot of people who come to yoga, they really come there for the full body workout. But I realized very quickly that there's a lot of people coming to my yoga classes who actually would prefer to just go running and then do some good stretches, or they'd prefer to do their stand-up paddleboard, or they'd prefer to, whatever it is, their activity that they're into. They actually came to yoga to overcome the issues that they were getting in their other sports. So I had a guy, a tennis player, and he's got this elbow and he can't play enough tennis. So he's not at yoga for yoga. He's at yoga to learn how to use yoga to help his tennis game. Mm-hmm. So this is where targeted, really intense stretching can be very, very beneficial. And most yoga classes are not about flexibility. They're about a whole bunch of things. So it's about breathing, it's about attention, it's about balance. It's a lot of strength, a lot of stamina, and then there's flexibility as well. And when you add that into the mix of those 5 odd things, it gets downplayed. And what that means is your results are going to take longer. So if you go every day, maybe in a year, you're going to see some results. But most people don't go every day. Most people go just once a week, because those other days they're doing their other thing, whether it's tennis or running. So it just they go every once a week for a year, and they're going to this class, and they were really just trying to fix their tennis elbow or whatever it was, and they just kind of feel discouraged because they're in this class and it's 90 minutes, and they'd rather be at the tennis court, or they'd rather be out doing their endurance racing or whatever it is. And so this is why targeted stretching can be really beneficial. Now the other group is also just hardcore yoga people who are really frustrated because one pose or 5 poses or whatever it is, they really get stuck on. Like all the hip openers are deadly, or all the back bends are impossible. Mm-hmm. And so what I found is that, just talking to my teachers when I first got started, is I found that, all the people I found who had really advanced practices, all of them were doing these kind of secret at-home practices. And what these secret at-home practices usually involved was like a television, a stopwatch, and laying around on the floor for a long time. And people had all kinds of different poses, but what I found is that, without exception, the most flexible people I found, they were doing stuff at home to open up their flexibility. And so I started teaching that as a tool, not necessarily to become a hardcore yoga student, but as a way that normal people could get really great, fast results safely from a yoga practice without necessarily needing to go full on and become a hardcore yoga student.
So on your website, you have nutritional supplements for yoga, and you've also got a trapeze style swing system that people can get. And so do you also have a book or a DVD where people can follow along and just kind of follow along for however long they want and learn the gravity yoga practice?
Yes, we have a number of different programs. We have something we call Gravity Yoga, which is what we've been talking about, these long hold, deep stretches, and we have it on book and audio and also DVD. Okay. And we also have a Yoga for Back Care program, which is the same idea, but just targeted towards your back health and your core strength specifically. And yeah, so we have all of the above. We have online training programs. We also do retreats and courses, and the whole idea is we're just trying to open up yoga to everyone. So instead of becoming this elite thing that only people who have the membership and have the 2 hours a day that it takes can do, it's something that anybody can do. Everybody's welcome. Every day we're working with students anywhere from 20 years old all the way up until people in their 80s and stuff. So it's really an exciting thing for us.
Yeah, and what I like about it too is that a traditional yoga class, I mean, they're great, and I go to one, but they can be costly, and you have to drive there, and there's all kinds of other things involved. Maybe someone is, like we're talking about earlier, maybe someone's a little shy and all that kind of stuff. But with your products, you can just get them and do them at home and kind of bypass all of that, which is kind of a great thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that I always say is it's not either or, it's just whatever works. So, some of my best students started off, some of our teacher trainers, some of our now yoga teachers, they started off practicing at home to my 15-minute a day series, and now they've turned into yoga teachers. And the other way around, some people who used to be so into yoga and they, for whatever reason, they kind of had a falling out and they started doing something else, or they lost interest, they're still able to maintain all the benefits of their yoga practice doing simple stuff at home. So what I always say with fitness, whatever works, absolutely, right. Whatever works, anything you're doing is awesome. So
in your studies and your experience, things that you've been exposed to, do you think yoga can slow down the aging process for people?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing, especially it's interesting, like in the raw food movement, it just turned into this whole longevity movement. I guess part of it is because a lot of the people who started it are getting older. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, so in yoga, the theory is, right, your age is determined by how many breaths you've breathed. So that's the whole idea. You slow down your breath and you extend your life is the idea. And I don't know if that's really true, but I do know, and I believe, in all my studies, everything I've learned, that nothing will kill you faster than stress. And, almost any disease, whether it's heart disease or cancer or whatever it is, and whatever it is you can imagine, almost all of it is caused, if not exacerbated, if not, whatever, by stress. And there's hardly anything you could find with better stress-relieving properties than regular mind-body practice, and that yoga is one of them that's more accessible to people. But Tai Chi, Qigong, any kind of meditation practice, all these things are really, really effective. So in that regard, there's no question in my mind that the stress-relieving benefits can have real measurable life extension properties.
Right, and do you think that running causes people to become more stiff?
It does, for sure. Running is like one of the common questions I get, and when I was in India studying in Mysore, there's a famous yoga city where all the Ashtanga yogis go, and then my neighbor, our yoga teacher, told him to stop riding a bike to the yoga shala because he said riding the bike, it's tightening up your quads or whatever. And this is where I just have to laugh out loud because people get crazy, and this is again where everything turns into religion. And it's like the guy's so obsessed about his yoga practice that he doesn't want to ride a bike, so right. It's definitely true that running will make you tight, and if you know any long-time runners, they get really stiff and they have a lot of challenges. It doesn't have to be that way, but it tends to be that way just because it's a yang practice. It's a strengthening practice. It's a muscle shortening as opposed to lengthening practice. But all that said, I mean, the benefits of running are just fantastic, and especially if you have a body that can handle it. I'm like a wannabe runner my entire life. every couple of years I'll get the itch again and I'll go out. My new thing was trying to do barefoot running, and it worked for a while, and then again my heel problems and shin splints and things came back. But if you're a runner and your body can handle it, I mean, it's just so fantastic for you on so many levels. I mean, if there's anything that's as cool as yoga to me, it's people who can maintain a running practice for their entire life. It's just it's again one of these tools that you can have any city, anywhere you are in the world, just strap on your shoes. But unfortunately, unlike yoga, the rate of injury is just sick. It's just ridiculously high. Almost nobody makes it. I mean, almost nobody can pull it off. So that's really the shame of it. But it definitely does make you stiff, but it doesn't have to. The thing that I always recommend is whatever you're doing that's strength building, whether it's resistance training, whether it's running, whatever it is, block off at least 25% of that time to stretch. So if you run for an hour, take a full 15 minutes of really, really targeted deep stretching. If you lift for an hour, same thing, take at least 15 minutes for deep stretching.
So do you recommend if people do some weight training or do some running that they stretch before, after, or during?
So the challenge is that people use the word stretch kind of loosely, and I do it myself, which is kind of a mistake. But basically what you see people doing before a run or before lifting weights, that's warming up. And we call it stretching, and it's kind of stretching, but it's really just warming up, right? You could do, what we could call quote unquote runner's stretches. You could do those every day for the rest of your life, and you wouldn't get any more flexible. So they're not actually stretches for flexibility. They're stretches to not get injured. They're warm-up stretches. They're stretches to take your joints through the full range of motion, and they're very, very important, and they're very valuable. But they'll never make you flexible, all right? Nobody became flexible because they did a couple of toe dips before they did their run, or nobody became super great back bends because before they did their bench press, they, did a shoulder stretch. It's just not how it happens. So, more properly warming up is a fantastic idea. I think any trainer or any coach would recommend a good warm up. When you do deep stretches, it's really, really important that you do them after.
Okay.
And the reason it's important that you do them after is because it's a total nervous system shift. Meaning when let's just say you're doing deadlifts, or let's just say you have a kettlebell and you're doing whatever, let's say you're doing kettlebell squats. What you're telling your body there on a nervous system level is fire, strength, shorten, tighten, all these kinds of yang style words. And then as soon as you get into what I teach, which is for flexibility, it's just the opposite. Relax, let go, release. And this is why, you'll put people in a pose, and at minute 5 compared to minute 1, they've literally moved inches. And it's nervous system, right? Their body didn't physically change in that first 5 minutes of practice. Their nervous system released. And so you don't want to put your body in a state where you're all loosey-goosey and then go do some sprints or go do some deadlifts. It's just not the right idea. So you want to do it the other way around. If you're going to do deep stretches, that's why I usually recommend doing really deep stretches at the end of your day. You can do them first thing in the morning, but you just don't want to do them right before you go out running or something like that.
Right. And what I like about your program is that you have a lot of emphasis on diet and nutrition and supplements and things like that. What have you found to be some of the worst things that people could eat or consume, maybe, that prevents people from becoming more flexible? And what are some of the best nutritional supplements people could take, or foods they could take, to increase their flexibility?
It's interesting. When I first started teaching this, food and flexibility, you just can't imagine the amount of crap that I got. Like, just everybody oh, it's not true, can happen, impossible. Right. And, and then here I am years later, and it's like, nobody ever questions at all. This is the question I get: what should I eat? What should I eat? So it's interesting how fast things shifted. Mm-hmm. And what happened is people just, I don't know why. I mean, every other sport, I don't care if it's a ballet dancer or a gymnast or a football player or a swimmer, they all have their foods. They all do it. They all have their foods. They all do. So there's a reason why all the dancers smoke, right? There's a reason why all the triathletes have these massive pasta dinners. Mm-hmm. These are not necessarily healthy choices that they're making, but they're doing it because their daily activity requires it. And there's a reason why, serious bodybuilders eat 40 chicken breasts a day, right? Again, not probably the best thing for your health, but there's a reason why they do it. And it's the same thing is true with yoga, only the challenge is a lot of the traditional advice is asked backwards. And so traditional advice is you just eat bread and milk all day. And unfortunately, bread and milk lead to all kinds of problems, not the least of which is inflammation and weight gain. And it's kind of the antithesis of what you want in yoga. And if you look at kind of the older old school yoga guys, they all have these big pot bellies, and they're mostly diabetic and insulin resistant, and they've gotten all these kinds of health problems from eating chapatis and yogurt their entire life, and in lieu of biodiverse diet. And so in any case, that's kind of a long intro, but the really best thing is what you just want to do is eat plants, and just eat as many plants as you can, and try to eat water-based foods and plant-based foods. And I usually recommend that people either try to eat fully plant-based or eat what I call reverse vegetarianism. And reverse vegetarianism is where you give up the dairy instead of giving up the meat. Okay. And it's kind of a new concept. And again, I get a lot of pushback from it. And people say, that's not ethical. And I say, well, you're picking one or the other. And in my mind, there's no difference in terms of an ethical or environmental impact. I don't see the difference. So if you're going to knock out one animal food or the other, to me, there's no difference. And so, I mean, obviously there's a difference if you go out and you kill the animal. That might feel different in your mind, but so that's what I recommend. Plant-based, either full vegetarian, meaning you're eating all plants, but that's really hard for most people to pull off. For whatever reason, it works great for me. I just no problems at all. But for some people, whether it's a social thing or whether it's a body type thing or whatever it is, for some people they feel like they need animal products. And in that case, I recommend what I call reverse vegetarianism, where they integrate some ideally wild-caught small game and eggs and things like this.
Okay, and so what are your thoughts about coffee? Because on your website I think you mentioned coffee a few times and its role in flexibility. So what have you learned about how coffee affects people's flexibility?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's another one of these kind of it's the staple of the yoga diet that's just really poor. So I mean, the traditional yoga, like if you go to a traditional yoga shala in India, before practice, everybody has a chai tea, which is it's like the equivalent of taking like an Americano or something. So they have a chai tea, they go and do their practice, and they come out and they eat a whole bunch of chapatis and yogurt. So it's just a disaster. Like first you fry your adrenals with all the caffeine, and then you eat a bunch of inflammatory food after doing some really serious physical activity. So the thing about coffee is, in moderation. If you have a cup of coffee a day, if you have a cup of tea a day, probably not going to have any health complications. And with everything, you got to kind of choose your battles and what makes the most sense for you. But these days, I just find that the consumption of caffeine has just gone crazy, and a lot of that has to do with places like Starbucks with gigantic servings. And here in Spain, it's funny. You go and order a coffee, and it's this teeny tiny little glass, an espresso, right? But that's all it is. People don't order 5; they just order 1. And then you go to Southern California, and it's like a 20-ounce cup full of those little glasses. And it really comes down to moderation. And really anything in moderation is just fine. I mean, you can take arsenic in moderation and you won't have any problems. But what happens is people get really carried away with caffeine. And between the coffee and the diet sodas and other things with caffeine in it, I just find that most people, within a matter of a decade, work up to the point where they're having 5+ caffeinated beverages a day. And the quickest thing that happens is they get constipated because they're dehydrated, and they just start to feel kind of stiff, all their joints, because they're dehydrated. And that stiffness and that adrenal fatigue and that nervous system fry really just leads to a poor yoga practice. But much more important than the yoga, it really just leads to poor health.
Now, does yoga do anything for increasing the flexibility of the tendons and joints, or is yoga, as you teach it, the gravity yoga, does that more lengthen the muscles only, or is it a kind of a combination of both?
Yeah, it's a controversial thing. People, you don't really want to lengthen your tendons and your ligaments because they're not like muscle tissue. Meaning, once they stretch, they don't go back. Right? It's like imagine you had a plastic shopping bag and you kind of rolled it and pulled really hard, and it got a little bit longer. That's kind of what your tendons and ligaments are like. So you don't want to increase the flexibility, but you want to increase the mobility and the agility of your tendons and ligaments. And the only way to do that is to use them. So what you're doing is you're putting them through a wide range of motion. But when you're talking about flexibility, what is flexibility? It's really truly the length of your connective tissues. And so you're working on a muscular level, you're working on your fascia, and you are working on the agility, the mobility of your tendons and your ligaments, but you don't want to stretch out your tendons, basically. So. Okay,
yeah. And I know that David Wolf has done a lot of work as far as calcium deposits and builds up in your joints and things like that. Would doing a program like that along with your program, I think he's got the Longevity Now program, which is, it aims to get rid of the bad calcium out of your body. Would that be a good program to do along with your program, because it kind of all works together?
Yeah, it certainly could be. I'm not a again, unfortunately what's happened with the raw food movement is turned into, like, when I first got into it, it was about like literally eating mangoes and pineapples. That was like our thing. It was like, who's got the pineapple, who's got the salad, who's got the kale. And now unfortunately it's turned into this crazy like cat and mouse chase, or either chasing it's like battle of the antioxidant or else battle of the toxin, like trying to figure out which device in our home is giving us more cancer than the other device, or trying to figure out which food is more powerful antioxidants than blueberries. It just becomes this kind of weird head game. And so I don't really know. I mean, they're very smart people, and they're doing some great work, but I don't really know in terms of the calcification thing. It's a wonderful theory. I don't know that there's that much science behind it, but for sure, again, like, I've never met somebody who ever said, I've been doing too much yoga. So that's the thing I always say.
Right.
I've never met somebody who said, man, I had a great week last week, but I should have skipped that class on Wednesday. That's the one that just pushed me over the edge. What they say is, should have skipped the drinks, should have skipped the happy hour, shouldn't have worked as long, should have got more sleep. But nobody ever says I skipped the yoga. So whether you're trying to decalcify your body, whether you're trying to de-stress, whether you're trying to get fit, there's a really good chance that your yoga practice is going to help with whatever you're doing.
Excellent. Yeah. So talk a little bit about, I know we got to wrap up here and you got to get going. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Really appreciate that. Talk a little bit about where you're going, what kind of things you're going to be doing in the future with your website and with your programs and things like that.
Sure. So yeah, we do. I have a few different businesses, and we do lots and lots of different things. But our big thing is just helping people transform their health. That's really what we do. So transform their health and transform their life. And so we do a lot of work now with mind, body, weight loss, which is a whole other topic we could talk about a different day. But helping people, lose massive amounts of weight, not necessarily through diet and exercise, but just by dealing with mental and emotional stresses in their life. So do a lot of work there. We do a lot of certifying of teachers, and so we certify people to be coaches, and we certify people to become yoga teachers. And so we have yoga teachers now in 48 countries, which is really exciting for me. And our goal moving forward is just to do a whole lot more of what we're doing now. So a lot more publishing, a lot more at-home programs, a lot more low-cost or no-cost programs, and a lot more professional training programs for people who, guys like you and me, who are just looking to really make a lifestyle of this thing they've become very interested in, which is some incarnation of health, whatever that means to different people.
Right. Your website is really awesome. I've been going through it lately in the past few days. You've got videos on there for free. You've got audio podcasts for free. You've got books and training materials and, obviously some paid courses, but you've really been putting a lot of work into your website.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you like it. We never stop. I mean, that's all I can say. It's not all pretty and it's not all perfect, but we never stop putting out stuff. So
awesome. All right, would you be? Can you hang on after I close out the show?
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Lucas. All right, thank you for visiting us today and listening to this interview, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. If you found value in this show, please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. That would help to grow this website and this community and following. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you on the next show. And if you would like to follow Lucas and his work, we are set up to be an affiliate for his site, and you can find that at extremehealthradio.com/yoga, and that will take you over to Lucas's site in case you want to buy any of his products. And if you're interested in what he's got going on over there, and you buy something, we'll get a little commission for that, and that would help us, and it would help us pay our bills and continue our work here. So we really thank you for listening, and hopefully you've gained a lot of value from this show and learned a lot of things about yoga and what he's got going on. I really like his program and his approach to raw food and his approach to cleansing and yoga and just really balancing things out. I think it's really, really cool, and I really like what he's got going on. And so when I first saw his website, I immediately connected to what he's teaching and what he's promoting over there. So also, if you would be so kind as to visit our store, we've got lots of great products in our store too for you to check out and to learn from. And so, visit our store and check out some of the products. I think you're going to like them. And thank you so much again for listening. I know I said that already, but really, really appreciate it. So thanks a lot. And if you have any questions, just email me, Justin at extremehealthradio.com.